Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and you're watching this episode of Top Stories from our studios here in the national capital, styled exclusively by none other than Paul Moll. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an expansive list of stories for all of you to cover. We will touch upon the climate change aspect. We will talk about the top developing global stories. But as well, today the Prime Minister, he's expected to speak in Hyderabad in our Mandate 2023 segment. We're going to throw some light on that. What's happening in Karnataka politics after that dismaying defeat of the Bharatiya Janata Party? It seems like the unit chief could be Vijendra, who's Yediyurappa's son. Apart from that, the pollution problem in the national capital, it seems there's some sort of relief over there as well. We're going to touch all these topics, but first and foremost, it's day 36 from that conflict in West Asia, where at least 11,000 Palestinians have now been killed. The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being. Well, there seems to be no end to the fighting. Yes, there has been diplomacy in terms of the 4-hour daily pauses. But take a look at this. Day 36, updates from the war front. 11,078 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis have been killed. The number of Israelis has gone down from the erstwhile figure of 1,400. Meanwhile, 4,506 is the number of children that have been killed in Gaza. And according to WHO chief, that's one child every 10 minutes. On the other hand, 39 IDF soldiers have been killed in the ground operation, the expansive ground operation, as it were, inside the Gaza Strip. 247 soldiers and civilians are being held hostage in Gaza, according to the Israeli ministry. 579 aid trucks have been let into the Gaza Strip so far over a month of this conflict. 33,960 residential units have been destroyed in Gaza, according to the Strip's ministry. On the other hand, the IDF says that more than 1 lakh Gazans have fled southwards within a span of just 2 days, even as that IDF's ground operation in the northern part of the Strip continues to deepen. Now, today is again going to be very important. Why? Because international diplomacy continues to take shape. Saudi Arabia is going to host that joint Islamic Arab Summit. Needless to say, Gaza is going to be the center focus. There's a proper humanitarian peace drive that's been rounding up world leaders in France as well. In Paris, that summit took place, where Emmanuel Macron, the French president, said Israel must stop killing babies and women in Gaza. This, even as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he's going to do whatever it takes to improve the lives of Israeli communities near Gaza's border. That's the latest that we're picking up right now, ladies and gentlemen. 11,078 Palestinians, 1,200 Israelis that have been killed, 4,500 children, one child per 10 minutes. That's the stat that has come out of WHO. Meanwhile, this child that has been killed on average every 10 minutes in the Gaza Strip. This particular statement came from World Health Organization Director General Tedros. He was speaking to the United Nations Security Council on Friday. He said that half of Gaza's 36 hospitals and 2/3 of its primary healthcare centers were not functioning, and those that were operating were way beyond their capacities, describing the healthcare system as being on its knees.
Tens of thousands of displaced people sheltering at hospitals, families crammed into overcrowded schools, desperate for food and water. More than 10,800 people have now been killed in Gaza, almost 70% of them women and children. On average, a child is killed every 10 minutes in Gaza. 1.5 million people have been displaced and are looking for shelter anywhere they can find it, but nowhere and no one is safe.
And take a look at this. Israeli airstrikes hit Gaza's biggest hospital, the Al-Shifa, on Friday, one of several hospitals that was struck at dawn as Israel battles Hamas in the heart of the Palestinian enclave. This report that's coming up next has graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is Gaza City's biggest hospital, moments after bombardment. People screamed and cried as they fled what Palestinian officials say were Israeli airstrikes at the Al-Shifa medical complex on Friday. The following graphic images, verified by Reuters, are filmed by Palestinian video creator Ahmed Hijazi. They show a number of dead and wounded, including children. This young girl is screaming, "Why, God, why?" Hijazi, who has a social media following of over 2 million, has been documenting the situation at Al-Shifa daily. In the footage, he says Israel's military targeted the hospital's outpatient clinic. Palestinian officials say several hospitals were struck at dawn on Friday, including the Indonesian hospital and the Rantisi Pediatric and Cancer Hospital in northern Gaza. Israel did not immediately comment, but has repeatedly said it does not target civilians and goes to great lengths to avoid hitting them. It says Hamas militants have hidden command centres and tunnels beneath Al-Shifa and other hospitals. Hamas denies this. Al-Shifa was already buckling under the strain of the unprecedented influx of wounded people, exacerbated by a lack of pain relief. The director of Al-Shifa Hospital says when large groups of injured are brought in at the same time, medics have no choice but to deal with them on the floor without adequate pain relief. On Thursday, a little girl cried out for her mother as a nurse stitched up her head injury without any anaesthetic. There was none available at the time. Nurse Abu Imad Hassanain said it was one of the worst moments he could recall.
Sometimes we give some of them sterile gauze to bite on and reduce their pain. We know that the pain they feel is more than someone would imagine, beyond what someone their age would stand.
Israel has faced growing international calls for restraints as the Palestinian death toll increases, but it says Hamas will take advantage of any significant pause in its military campaign. Palestinian officials said that as of Thursday, over 10,800 Gaza residents have been killed in air and artillery strikes. About 40% of them are reported to be children. Israel says 1,400 people were killed, mostly civilians, and about 240 were taken hostage by Hamas in the October 7th raid that triggered its assault. Gaza's health ministry has said around half of Gaza's 35 hospitals are out of service, either due to damage from shelling or a lack of fuel.
And in terms of international diplomacy around this West Asian conflict, Saudi Arabia is all set to host 2 emergency summits on Saturday to discuss the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Foreign ministers of the Arab nations have gathered in Riyadh for the Arab League summit to discuss the situation in Gaza. The other will be a summit of the countries which form the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi will be making his first visit to Saudi Arabia to participate in the OIC summit. Now, Saudi Arabia's investment minister, Khalid Al-Falih, said that the objective of hosting these 2 summits together was to work towards a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Gaza. The summit is expected to focus on the heads of states of the Islamic and Arab countries meeting behind closed doors in a show of unity and stress upon the urgency to stop the Israeli aggression in Gaza and bring about a ceasefire. Talking about the possibility of normalization of ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel, Falih said that even though normalization was on the table, it received a major setback due to the events last month. And talking about taking ownership, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has said that the Palestinian Authority is ready to take control of the Gazan Strip once again after the bombing in the enclave ends. Abbas, however, said that Palestinian Authority will only take control of the enclave if the move is part of a larger comprehensive solution that includes the establishment of a Palestinian state as per the 1967 borders. Now, in his speech marking the 19th death anniversary of Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, Abbas pitched the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. By doing this, Abbas sought to completely delegitimize the Hamas group, which has been in control of the Gazan enclave since the year 2007. While expressing the Palestinian Authority's intention to retake control of Gaza, Abbas also called upon the international community to provide guarantees and to come up with a timeline to end the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory. Now, this statement by Abbas comes at a time when Israel has already hinted that it intends to retain security control over Gaza for an indefinite period once it ends its military operation. The international community too has till now been hesitant about playing a role in deciding Gaza's future. Meanwhile, this coming across from the Israeli Defense Forces, more than 1 lakh residents of the Gaza Strip have fled southwards over the last 2 days as Israeli forces operate, quote-unquote, deep in Gaza City. This has been corroborated by Chief Military Spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari on Friday. Now, in a televised briefing, Hagari said efforts were underway to release hostages held in the Gaza Strip, but that such efforts will take time. He said, "We are working all the time and with the initiative on a range of efforts, of course, of returning the hostages as well. These efforts are complex, they're not final, they take time, they're going to take time. We have to continue to do what we're doing." Meanwhile, more than 1 lakh that have fled towards the south of the Gaza Strip just within the last 2 days. This even as reports came in that some of these roads, so-called quote-unquote humanitarian corridors, were attacked under Israeli airstrikes as well. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to improve the lives of Israeli communities living near the border with the Gaza Strip. He made the comments during a meeting with local leaders from communities near the Gazan border. Now, according to Israeli media, the council in charge of planning and building approved that last week the plan to construct a community roughly about 7 kilometers from the border. So a new community that's going to come up.
There's a very great determination of them and the government to return, even better than what was before. Restore, build, grow. First of all, to restore security, to make sure that there is no Hamas and that Hamas does not return, but also to make sure that there will be a better life for them in the future.
In terms of international help, coming up next, a detailed report on the European Union's response to the escalating crisis in Gaza. The European Union is stepping up its emergency aid to the Palestinian territory, addressing critical shortages of food, fuel, and medicine, and a little bit of hope as well.
The start of a journey to save civilian lives. Near the Belgian town of Ostend, this plane chartered by the European Union is being loaded up with boxes bearing food and health supplies like syringes and medicine, all bound for the people of Gaza. The EU says it wants to send them a message.
We are not forgetting you. We will be there to help you. We will be there to help you. You can count on the European Union. The European Union has been assisting, providing humanitarian assistance to Palestinian people since the year 2000 and shall continue to do so as long as necessary.
This EU-backed delivery is the 8th of its kind in the last few weeks, sent to local humanitarian staff on the ground.
From here in Belgium, that plane will then fly several hours toward Egypt. The Egyptian Red Crescent will then come to collect all those key supplies that are on board.
But how soon will this aid make it to ordinary Gazans? Humanitarian access to the besieged territory is still severely limited, and aid workers say that has to change.
Nothing is good if it sits in a warehouse in an emergency response. It needs to go immediately to the affected population. This is why our collective call is unhindered and continuous access to the population within Gaza to ensure they can get what they need at the time that they need it.
Colleagues are there on the ground. What are they telling you about their experience?
It's terrifying. The reality is we've got volunteers from the Palestinian Red Crescent Society each morning who are working in the ambulance shifts and telling each other goodbye because they don't know if they're going to be able to come back.
The EU has more than tripled its humanitarian aid funding for Palestinians and says there is no evidence this support is being used by terror group Hamas. More humanitarian air bridge flights are planned, but with the situation for civilians in Gaza described as dire, it's a race against time to reach people waiting on the other side.
Now, Israeli forces say that they fought the Hamas terrorists and inched their way closer to two big hospitals in northern Gaza as the plight of civilians in the besieged Palestinian territory worsened. Many continue to flee the embattled north towards the south, and according to the Israeli Defense Forces, that number is above 1 lakh within a span of 2 days.
Smoke rises behind Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. In the courtyard and corridors are thousands of displaced people. At the gates, body bags. Israeli forces fought Hamas militants among ruined buildings in the north of the Gaza Strip on Thursday, inching their way closer to Al-Shifa and another main hospital in Gaza City. In the emergency room, this man says he and others tried to head south, but when they reached the road, a tank fired at them. Others fled along a frontline route. The White House said on Thursday Israel has agreed to pause operations in northern Gaza for 4 hours a day from Thursday, the first sign of respite in Gaza's war, allowing people to flee along 2 humanitarian corridors. Some of those escaping on Thursday said they feared another Nakba, the catastrophe of their mass dispossession after Israel was founded in 1948.
They are driving people to schools and scaring them so they would leave. What we see today is a plan for a second exodus.
What do things look like behind us? Death and destruction. Death and destruction.
US President Joe Biden says he's seeking a longer halt of 3 days to help secure the release of hostages held by Hamas.
We're hopeful. Things are moving along.
Israel unleashed its assault on Gaza in response to a cross-border raid by Hamas gunmen, who killed 1,400 people, mostly civilians, as well as kidnapping about 240. But the plight of Palestinians trapped in the besieged enclave has stoked global calls for a ceasefire, which is rejected by Israel and its main ally, the United States. Palestinian officials said more than 10,800 Gaza residents had been killed as of Thursday, about 40% of them children. At a humanitarian conference in Paris on Thursday, officials from about 80 countries and organisations were trying to coordinate a response. Jan Egeland heads the Norwegian Refugee Council.
We cannot wait a minute more for a humanitarian ceasefire across Gaza for all of the civilian population there. And we cannot wait a minute more for a lifting of the siege, which is collective punishment of 1 million children.
But there's more to this West Asian conflict. There's a war that's happening with Lebanon, the Hezbollah over there. The Houthis in Yemen are constantly attacking Israeli targets. They're both exchanging fire. Now, take a closer look at the evolving sentiments of the Palestinians in Lebanon amid the escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas. As Israel's actions intensify, Palestinian refugees in Lebanon find themselves in a complex situation, torn between conflicting perspectives on the war. Take a look.
Crossing into Burj al-Barajni Palestinian refugee camp, giants of the Palestinian cause watch over you. Some say that 20,000 people live here in less than 2 square kilometers. That would make it as dense as Gaza City. The similarities between the two places are hard to miss. Makeshift block houses, narrow streets, UN facilities providing aid. Every street here is strung with this mass of wires and water pipes. They were actually built by the residents themselves with the help of aid organizations. That's because this camp isn't serviced or inspected by Lebanese authorities. It's kind of a world apart, a little Palestine, where residents are basically sitting and waiting to go back to their original homelands. Deep inside the maze of streets, we meet an elderly woman who was born in Tarshiya in present-day Israel, but was forced to flee in 1948 when she was just 2 years old. She's lived her whole life as a refugee. In recent weeks, she's done little but watch the news and grieve.
I've been watching from the first day. Of course I have. It's my family and my friends. Of course I've been watching, my dear. May Mohammed protect all of the people of Gaza. And with the help of Mohammed, we'll all return to our country.
The militant group Hamas has never had much of a foothold here in Burj al-Barajni, but its name has appeared scribbled on walls in recent weeks. Some people celebrated Hamas terror attacks on October 7th in these streets. Now they're furious at the Israeli response. Imad was born here. He got a degree in business management in Beirut, but because he's a refugee, he's barred from most jobs outside the camp. So he sells flavored ice from a motorbike.
I do feel a very strong connection with Gaza. I feel like one of them. When I see a building collapsing or a child dying, I get goosebumps and I feel anxious and angry about it. So if a war starts in Lebanon, I would join the resistance to defend Palestine. My family and my kids are not better than the ones dying in Gaza.
I ask him if he condones Hamas's killing of over 1,000 Israeli civilians in October. He denies without evidence that they were the targets of the attacks. There's an increase in violent anti-Israel sentiment here as the news of civilian deaths in Gaza plays on TVs across the camp. But at the same time, there's a growing fear of what might happen if Hamas and its allies were to draw Israel into a wider war.
The Palestinian guys, if you see here in the camp, like my brother or my men cousins, they are able to have a gun and go to the borders to kill the Israeli, and this is our land and we want it back.
Do you think that it's wise to not provoke Israel so that Lebanon stays out of the war?
As you see, the building in the camp, they are not well maintained. They are not, so it's one bomb, they will let the camp fall down. So I will die. So for sure, I don't want war, and I think no one in Lebanon wants war, and we don't also want peace with Israel. So that's it.
Dreading war, unwilling to accept peace. It's a contradiction that runs through this camp.
Well, we'll continue to bring you all the latest developments from that conflict in West Asia, but shifting our focus to some stories back home. Take a look at some domestic political developments, because ahead of the November 30th Telangana Assembly election, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he's scheduled to address a massive public rally in Hyderabad. Now, the rally is being organized by the Madiga Reservation Porata Samiti, which has been fighting for the cause of Madigas. Now, through this rally, the BJP will aim to garner the support of the Madigas, who make up about 60% of the scheduled caste population in the state of Telangana. The Samiti has been demanding the subcategorization of SCs for almost 3 decades. The support of the Madigas could be crucial in deciding the outcome of the assembly polls as well. Political experts believe that the Madigas are in a position to decide the fates of candidates in at least 20 to 25 assembly constituencies. It is expected that the Prime Minister could announce the subcategorization of scheduled castes. This will entail fixing a separate quota for some castes within the SC category, which in turn is expected to benefit the Madigas. The ruling BRS has already announced the Dalit Bandhu scheme to woo the SCs, including the Madigas. Now, if Madigas announce their support to the BJP, then the equation could change and tilt in favor of the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is trying to make inroads into the south after its lost Karnataka elections to the Congress. In the last assembly polls back in the year 2018, the Madiga Reservation Porata Samiti had backed the Congress and even campaigned for them. But this time, things are a little different. But talking about the Bharatiya Janata Party making inroads in the south, that too 6 months after losing the May assembly elections in Karnataka, the BJP, in an effort to placate Lingayat anger, appointed former Karnataka Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa's son, B.Y. Vijendra, as the president of the Karnataka state unit. Now, B.Y. Vijendra replaces Nalin Kumar Katil. The BJP, with Vijendra's appointment as state unit chief, has opened the doors to criticism for encouraging dynastic politics as well. Vijendra's elevation shows that the Bharatiya Janata Party is still dependent on B.S. Yediyurappa for the state of Karnataka and has not been able to evolve the next generation of pan-Karnataka leaders. Take a look at this. Vijendra is a first-time MLA from Shikaripura constituency, which was held by his father, B.S. Yediyurappa, for decades on it. He has served as secretary of BJP's youth wing in Karnataka and was vice president before he was elevated to the post of the president. The son of the former chief minister is known to be an astute politician and a risk taker as well. Now, Vijendra is being touted as the successor to his father's political legacy. B.S. Yediyurappa had vacated the Shikaripura seat for his son. Now, why Vijendra was appointed? The appointment comes as an acknowledgement that the BJP erred by not giving B.S. Yediyurappa charge of the May elections that they lost out. The May elections, spearheaded by the BJP National Organization Secretary B.L. Santosh, tried to change the time-tested BJP calculations in the Kittur Karnataka and Kalyana Karnataka regions, which resulted in Lingayat backlash. Now, Vijendra's appointment will likely placate the Lingayat communities in these regions. The BJP does not want to see a similar backlash during the 2024 Lok Sabha elections and wants its state leadership to ensure the party wins in at least 20 of the 28 parliamentary seats in the state. So, could things change after the appointment of B.Y. Vijendra, the son of B.S. Yediyurappa, as Bharatiya Janata Party's state unit chief? Well, that's something that we'll have to look at. And a stout politician and a risk taker. But has the Bharatiya Janata Party really been able to evolve that next generation of pan-Karnataka leaders? And dynastic politics, something that the BJP really goes all guns blazing at. Is that something that's going to come back to bite the party later? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. And fresh developments are underway in the growing India-US partnership. We all know that the 2+2 dialogue, the ministerial dialogue, is currently underway, and India and US have announced plans to co-produce the Stryker armored vehicle as part of the efforts to counter China's influence in Asia. The Stryker armored vehicle, something that is adorned by the US military, something that has already been sold across the world. Many fans of this Stryker armored vehicle. Now, the announcement was made by a senior US official after the annual 2+2 ministerial consultations held between India and the United States in New Delhi. That's the picture, a representative shot of what the Stryker armored vehicle can do. Now, the defense deal aims to check China's expansionist ambitions, keep the crucial Indo-Pacific channel open and free from coercion. Let's take a look at what the Stryker combat vehicle actually is. Now, the Stryker is a wheeled combat vehicle that is produced by the US. It has two variants and it's prized by US for its versatility. The armed vehicle can be used as infantry carriers and reconnaissance platforms as well. Now, the vehicle is primarily used to move soldiers in and out of battle and also carry medium and large caliber weapons to attack enemy troops. The Stryker armored vehicle, very soon to be part of the Indian armory as well. the air quality index, something that has been choking the national capital, there's some sort of relief for the second day today. It did rain over the national capital yesterday, and it seems like that trickling effect is something that can be seen today as well. The overall air quality in Delhi showed a marginal improvement because of the rainfall on the 10th of November in the entire region. Now, despite the improvement, the air quality still remains in the poor category, but it still is an improvement from the very severe category that we were in earlier. Now, this has been corroborated by the Central Pollution Control Board as well. After the rains led to a decrease in the concentration of pollutants, the Delhi government said it will postpone the implementation of the odd-even rationing scheme and rethink their artificial rainfall plan. However, the GRAP measures are still in place in the national capital, and Delhi University has preponed their winter break owing to the pollution in the city. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is hearing a bunch of pleas concerning the rising air pollution in Delhi and the practice of stubble burning. It has been doing so over the better part of last week as well. Now, the court has once again questioned the Delhi government over the measures it is taking to curb pollution. Taking note of the stubble burning issue, the apex court said that the government had to come up with a strategy to control stubble burning. It suggested that long-term measures were needed to crop replacement in a phased manner, and also asked the authorities to encourage crops which do not leave stubble behind. The court noted that there were no incentives for the farmers to make such a switch. It suggested the government to use a carrot and stick policy to deal with the issue. Now, Justice Kaul said that certain emergency measures were required to address the issue of farm fires across North India and especially in Punjab. The Supreme Court also expressed concern on the reducing groundwater in Punjab. It said that there is a need to phase out paddy cultivation in the state. It asked the government to come up with a methodology to phase out paddy cultivation in Punjab. The Supreme Court once again questioned the efficacy of the odd-even scheme in curbing the pollution levels in Delhi that now the Delhi government says it's going to put on hold. Justice Kaul also noted that as per reports, vehicular pollution only contributed to about 17% of the pollution, and questioned as to how much of an effect the odd-even scheme will have on the pollution situation. And taking a look at an overall update of the top international developments as well. The United States Food and Drug Administration has approved the world's first vaccine for chikungunya. The vaccine, named IXCHIQ, LXCHIQ, has been approved for individuals who are 18 years of age and above and who are not at an increased risk of exposure to the chikungunya virus. Now, IXCHIQ is a single-dose vaccine which is to be injected directly into the muscle. The vaccine contains a live and weakened version of the chikungunya virus, and it may cause symptoms similar to those experienced by people suffering from chikungunya. Now, the safety of the IXCHIQ vaccine was evaluated in 2 clinical studies conducted in North America with about 3,500 people participating in it. The most commonly reported side effects amongst those tested were headache, fatigue, muscle pain, joint pain, fever, and nausea as well. Only 1.6% of the recipients suffered from severe chikungunya-like adverse reactions, which required medical intervention later on. Only 2 recipients with severe chikungunya-like adverse reactions needed to be hospitalized out of them. Now, with all these results emerging in the study, the vaccine comes with a prescribing information warning that the vaccine may cause prolonged chikungunya-like adverse reactions. IXCHIQ was approved using the accelerated approval pathway, which allows the FDA to approve certain products for serious or life-threatening conditions based on evidence of a product's effectiveness. The FDA has now asked the vaccine manufacturer to conduct a post-marketing study to assess the risk of these serious reactions following the administration of Ixchiq, the world's first chikungunya vaccine, now approved by the FDA. Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are planning to meet in California on the 15th of November. That is on the upcoming Wednesday. Now, the meeting will be taking place on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, which will be attended by both the leaders in San Francisco. A lot is expected to be on the agenda as leaders of the two fiercely competitive nations meet. According to President Biden's advisors, the larger context of the meeting is to stabilize relations between the two countries. As per two senior advisors in the Biden administration, the president would also be looking to bring up issues including Taiwan, election interference, the war in Ukraine, and also the war between Israel and Hamas. Talking about Taiwan, the self-ruled island is set to hold elections next year. And as per United States officials, President Joe Biden would seek to present the United States' concerns in front of President Xi Jinping with utmost clarity. Now, the United States seeks that Beijing would not interfere in the democratic process in Taiwan. President Biden is also expected to warn Xi Jinping against interfering in the United States' elections, which are scheduled for next year as well. The ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza are also expected to be on the agenda as the two nations seek to strengthen their position on the geopolitical chessboard. Now, ahead of the meet, China's ambassador to the United States has already said that China seeks reassurances that the United States would not seek to change China's system, that it does not support Taiwan's independence, and also that the US has no intention to seek economic decoupling with China. Wednesday's meeting will be the first time since the G20 summit in 2022 in Indonesia that Joe Biden and Xi Jinping will come face to face with each other. Since then, tensions were heightened after a Chinese spy balloon crossed over into the United States in February this year and was later shot down by an American fighter jet. More recently, tempers have again been on a high over matters such as Chinese espionage and United States' restrictions on technology exports to China. Geopolitical experts and analysts have cautioned against expecting any breakthroughs from the meeting between the two leaders. And like I mentioned before, President Joe Biden, he's going to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping face to face for the first time in a year this upcoming Wednesday. The White House said in this high-stakes diplomacy, it's going to be aimed at curbing tensions between the world's two superpowers.
For the first time in a year, U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet face-to-face in California for a high-stakes discussion aimed at curbing tensions between the world's two superpowers. The White House confirmed the meeting on Friday, and senior administration officials said the two leaders were expected to discuss the Israel-Hamas war and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as well as several other topics including North Korea, Taiwan, fentanyl, and artificial intelligence.
I think this is a very important moment that might be a turning point in U.S.-China relations, which have continued to deteriorate for many years.
Vinny Agarwal is a professor of political science at UC Berkeley.
I think having the two presidents meet is a very good idea because there's been a lot of tension in U.S.-China relations over semiconductors, over technology transfer and the like. And so I think the opportunity to have a conversation with President Xi and having President talk to President Biden will be very useful because I think the Chinese are now beginning to see that it's useful to have good relations with other countries, including Korea, Australia, and the like, and they're actually making an effort now to reach out to other countries.
Tensions have flared between the two countries since their last meeting a year ago. In February, Biden ordered the shooting down of a suspected Chinese spy balloon that transited U.S. skies. Biden is also expected to raise Chinese influence operations in foreign elections and the status of U.S. citizens Washington believes are wrongly detained in China. The closely watched interaction, which is set for Wednesday on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in the San Francisco Bay Area, could last hours and involve teams of officials from Beijing and Washington.
Now, on that agenda between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping is going to be the Ukraine-Russia war as well. And as the cold weather descends, authorities in Kyiv anticipate potential threats from Moscow targeting civilian infrastructure, particularly the electric grid. Up next is a comprehensive report on Ukraine's proactive measures to safeguard its infrastructure from potential winter strikes.
As the days grow shorter in Ukraine, memories of last winter return. The nighttime attacks and days without electricity or heat. Many expect another hard winter. But Ukraine has learned a lot about Russia's strategy and has been preparing all year. For one, the Ukrainian military will now prioritize large electrical substations for air defense. The stations deliver electricity to up to 500,000 households in big cities like Kyiv and prove vulnerable to Russian attacks. Engineers are also rebuilding smaller substations damaged in Russian strikes and housing them in blast-resistant concrete. Last year, the Russians destroyed around 3,000 local substations just in the Kyiv region. The new sheds can't withstand a direct hit from a missile, but they can absorb shrapnel from a nearby blast.
Maybe there will be some damage, but if there are any impacts, it won't be as significant, and we can quickly react to repair this object and make it work again.
Despite the lessons learned, Ukraine's energy infrastructure is going into this winter at a disadvantage. Russia has destroyed a vast amount of expensive equipment, and replacements are only arriving in Ukraine piece by piece.
And it means that resilience in general, of course, is lower than before all these things started. That we are in between. From one side, we well prepared, we have understanding what's happened, we have a lot of training and preparation done. From other side, from equipment side, we are on weaker position.
But Harchenko believes Russia no longer harbors the illusion that it can bring Ukraine's cities to their knees through attacks on infrastructure.
I believe that it will be hard, but we will survive.
Air raid sirens in Ukraine's capital Kyiv have been fairly quiet in recent weeks, but few expect that to last very long.
Next up, take a look at this. An in-depth report on the alarming surge in gang violence amongst Sweden's teens. Now, the Swedish government vows to address the issue after a rise in killings, with many involved being children. In Helsingborg, local activists are taking action to break this concerning cycle.
Teenagers shot dead in the woods. Gang warfare has reached such dangerous levels in Sweden, the government has called on the army for help.
More and more children and innocent bystanders are falling victim. I cannot overemphasize the seriousness of the situation.
But increasingly, children aren't just the victims, they're also the perpetrators. Gang members I met say even they are appalled.
When you're 10 years old, you can earn 10,000 euros in 1 month. 11, 12-year-old kids kill each other. People pay 100,000 for one murder, and it's a kid that does it.
And those who've long been working to end such incidents are shocked.
Especially the really young perpetrators and victims. It was impossible to even think about that this could happen here.
Less impossible to imagine in some neighborhoods, like this one in the southern Swedish city of Helsingborg, where there are bullet holes in school playgrounds.
Here.
This is an elementary school. Omar Al-Mali grew up here and is trying to improve the neighborhood.
There are ages you don't need to know about these things. You don't need to know about shooting, about drugs, about these things. You need to be protected.
Teacher Lina Darawi tries to protect students by building trust and intervening if she sees them headed down the wrong path, which she can detect at very early ages.
I can see the 8, 9.
Darawi says the government should put more money into after-school programs as an alternative to the streets, where, she warns, the youth, feeling disconnected from Swedish society, are seeking out the gangs themselves. They see it glamorized in the media and rap culture, she tells me. And teens become the recruiters.
I know friends in my school that sells
He told me, one time he come to me and told me, do you want to sell? I told him, no, bro, why are you doing this?
That's why Omar Al-Mali has set up his own help group called United Brothers. So at least once a week, thanks to the goodwill of his employer, these teens have a place to go.
He inspires us to do good things.
Al-Mali also guides teens to other positive role models, like world champion Muay Thai boxer Mustafa Abutaka. Abutaka wants youth to feel both accomplished and integrated. He purposely trains them under a huge Swedish flag. But like Al-Mali, he receives no government funds and has a hard time finding help. He can't take on more students.
Some people doesn't want to do it for free. I think the government should go in and sponsor more and give us more place to be in and more capacity.
Those who do get in know they're lucky. Aziz says he sees the 9 and 10-year-olds being groomed by gangs and then committing crimes later. At 16, he says he turns away because he can come here.
When I just step in the mat and put my gloves on, I'm in another world.
In the world he leaves behind, the gang members tell me they want to stop other youth from leading their lives. They urge Swedish society to integrate kids from at-risk neighborhoods fast.
Me, I'm old, it's too late. But these kids, they can become doctors, they can become pilots, they can become everything. Show them that.
Omar Al-Mali is doing his best to show both youth and Swedish authorities they have to make good choices now if they want a better future.
And this story in our climate change segment, Lake Titicaca, which is South America's largest freshwater body, is facing an alarming drought that is impacting local farmers, just like Manuel Flores that you can see. Now, the lake, revered by pre-Columbian people, is vital for wildlife and water supply to millions. Record low water levels, intensified by El Nino and climate change, hinder agriculture, leaving crops parched and livestock struggling. Now, Manuel Flores, once navigating by boat, now walks the dried lake bed. Scientists attribute 95% of water loss to evaporation, emphasizing climate change's role as well. Bolivia, with a 39% drop in surface waters since the year 1985, grapples with deforestation, fires, and global temperature rise. The region faces a critical agricultural threat. And with that, it's a wrap on this segment of Top Stories. They continue right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
They picked my husband. He was tortured there for 2 years. He was enforced disappeared. We had no idea where he is. Within 15 minutes, we got the information that the whole area is surrounded by Pakistan Army. I came out from that in disguise, and after 5 to 6 hours, I was in